It's Sunday, April 6, 2025. I'm Anthony Davis. Welcome to the Weekend Show, where we make the time to consider the news of the week. You can support my work and independent journalism at patreon.com/5 Minute News. Our guest today is the executive director of DemCast USA, the largest progressive digital amplification network seen by billions of people spreading truthful pro-democracy messages across all platforms. Nick Knudsen, welcome back to the Weekend Show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be back.
Nick, it's testing times, obviously. The rise of authoritarianism in the US is not something that anybody thought they would see, although many of us did predict it. And so this is what we're dealing with now as a reality, seeing people disappeared off the streets and, taken to a El Salvadorian prison and by mistake in some cases. This is not normal times, and Trump's tariffs, of course, have ricocheted around the world. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But first, I want to ask you how your work has changed. Obviously, with Kamala Harris and all the work you did leading up to the election, losing to Donald Trump. How has that changed what you do, and what is the kind of reaction from the people that you work with and volunteer with you?
Yeah, so DemCast is a 501c4 nonprofit, and we recruit and train people to use their social media accounts to spread pro-democracy information and combat against disinformation online. So because we're a volunteer organization, obviously a lot of our folks were extremely disheartened and downtrodden post-election. And so it's been a process to bring people back, get them back into the fold, get them re-energized. And I think a lot of as they've started to see what the Trump administration is starting to do, they've sort of like taken a deep breath and said, "Yep, here we go again. Got to get back in the saddle." So folks are definitely starting to get re-energized, as we can see from the April 5th hands-off protests. And just generally in terms of work, I mean, it's been a 180 in terms of the type of work that we do, because it's about truth telling. It's moved from a campaigning footing to a footing where we're trying to relay to the American people on social media the impacts of what Trump and his administration are doing on regular people. And people are scared. They're scared they're going to lose their Social Security. They're scared that they're going to repeal the ACA, everything, dismantle the Department of Education. It's all extremely, meaningful things to people, kitchen table type issues from economics to social safety nets. So we're going to be busy.
Do you think people are surprised, because there has been a lot of talk about the fact that so much of the stuff that he's doing, he did not campaign on? We know he campaigned on immigration and security, but beyond that, lowering prices was a big thing. That clearly hasn't happened and is going in the opposite direction. But all of this stuff, this extra stuff that he's doing, like shutting down the Department of Education, although many of us knew about it because we'd read Project 2025 and we kind of understood the rhetoric, it wasn't something that your average person would really necessarily understand unless they were particularly engaged in the news cycle, as most people are not. So is that an issue that people are just shocked at quite how extreme these policies are?
I think so, and I think that's what we're counting on. So as far as people in the DemCast network, nobody's surprised, because those folks have been paying very close attention for a very long time. They're activists. But as far as just the regular everyday Americans who are receiving the message, they're we see it on social media a lot, with just people going on TikTok or going on Instagram Reels and saying, "Hey, I'm a veteran. I just got fired from my federal job that I've been really successful at, and I just didn't think that this was going to impact me in this way," or whatever the story is. And that's kind of what we're counting on. I mean, that's what we're going to need. And that's why DemCast as an organization is going to really focus on spotlighting the impacts of the policy choices of the Trump administration on regular people. Because once people hear those stories, even if they're not in a position where they've been impacted yet. Hey, that's my neighbor. Hey, that's my friend. That's my college roommate. What's going on here? And that's where resistance and revolution starts.
Because people forget that the US, when polled nationally, is quite a progressive country. It's not really anything like this kind of minority view that Trump and his henchmen have. And that can be applied to everything from people's views on abortion right through to immigration. And yet this messaging, this kind of hateful and cruel messaging is now coming to fruition.
Yeah. I mean, that's been their whole shtick, I mean, that's why the Trump campaign was talking about immigrants and trans people, which is not actually, and voter fraud and all these, which are not actual real massive problems in the United States.
Create a problem and then claim to fix it. That's his
right.
How he operates.
Yep, and then come in and pillage the government and make as much money as you can.
And the economy is obviously the often the biggest thing in the US that people are voting on. And there was a lot of residue left over from Trump being the host of The Apprentice and being this kind of amazing businessman or TV businessman, as we now know. Do you think that there are Republicans? Because I haven't really heard from many Republicans. Maybe it's because I've kind of come off of X and I'm not really accessing a lot of these views anymore. But do you think that there is a movement of former Trump voters or Trump voters who are now also, as you said, the ones who were working for the federal government who feel betrayed?
Yeah. No, I do. I think it'll be a increasing trend because the shit hasn't even really hit the fan yet. To be honest, it's all still. I mean, obviously the stock market, has taken a massive hit, and these tariffs are ridiculous. Farce of a policy, but that doesn't the economics of that has not hit the everyday American yet, and when that happens, there's going to be a lot of pain. This is going to be really painful for a lot of people, and it sucks that we have to endure that for people to sort of wake up and realize, like, oh shit.
And the other thing I think is fear. And this is something that Kamala Harris talked about in the campaign and has actually spoken about in the last few days as well, that they want us to fear them. And by doing this kind of extreme form of kidnapping, disappearing people off the streets, saying that, your valid visa is not valid. Right. All of that stuff, it has put the fear of God into a large number of people. Yeah. Are we going to see those people protesting as well? Like, do you get a sense that this is going to bring all groups together, including maybe the Latino community that voted for Trump, suddenly realizing that he has, effectively deceived them?
That's the hope. That's our way out of this. It's got to be a massive, very diverse group in terms of racial and socioeconomic status. People with college degrees, people without college degrees, all realizing, wow, this is hitting all of us. And the fear piece is a really important part of an authoritarian takeover. Political scientists very much believe that we are not in a democracy state now. We are in a competitive authoritarianism state, and that's because the Trump administration is leveraging the power of the federal government to try and scare people and bully people into submission, from universities to immigrants to media. And that's what authoritarians do. And it's going to take a lot of courage from a lot of people in civil society to stand up to that and fight back.
It reminds me of the Roosevelt quote from his first inaugural address: "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." Never was that truer, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. In America, I mean, this is it. This is we're we're at the precipice of either devolving into a authoritarian state or a dictatorship, or standing up and fighting back and redeclaring, as our founders did, that we want to be a self-governed society. And this, so, I didn't want to live in a time like this, but we have to live effectively in the times that we're born into, and here we are.
Because that's the difference, isn't it, from history? For those of us who know our history, it's if you succumb to the fascist, then that is what gives them their autocracy and enables their rise. And recognizing that standing up to it and speaking out is the only way to prevent these types of movements from being successful. I kind of fear that Trump is hoping that there will be some kind of public disorder so he can bring in the National Guard and do all that stuff. The protests yesterday did not demonstrate that, proof that people can peacefully protest no matter how serious the subject matter.
Absolutely. And props to everybody who came out on April 5th, and we're going to need a lot more of that energy going forward. I think the thing that we have to watch out for is, sort of false flag events where there's apparent disorder at protests, but it's actually allies of the government. I mean, this is what authoritarian regimes do. They come in and they stir up trouble on purpose so that they can say, this isn't safe.
Yes.
We have to take more control.
And it does seem that a lot of the policies, especially around DEI, which has very much been the theme, that's how they kind of started with Doge, which seems like a distant memory. It was only 2 months ago that all that craziness was kicking off.
Right.
But actually, none of this was ever about waste, fraud, or abuse. This was always ideological. And then when you look at the things that they put on the Doge website claiming that they had saved saved money from, these were all essential programs and services that they just didn't agree with because they are seeking to whitewash the United States.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Doge was never actually about waste, fraud, and abuse. Doge is a wrecking ball. They came in to effectively destroy the United States government. That's what Project 2025 called for, and that's what they're doing. And we can only hope that as has happened so far, that legal challenges continue to be upheld in the courts, in that what they're doing is illegal, and they can't just randomly fire people, cancel federal contracts, cancel union contracts, all these things. But that's putting a lot of faith in a what's meant to be a separate but equal branch of government that has a lot of Trump appointees in it. So,
that's becoming the problem, though, isn't it? Because we're seeing this time and time again. You have to pick your district wisely when even suing the federal government. It seems this kind of crossbreeding of law and politics is kind of exclusive to the United States in this way. I mean, I don't recognize it from Europe, and yet here it seems perfectly normal, where judges are, getting elected, DAs are getting elected in fundraising. I mean, it seems crazy to me, but that's the system we're working with.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the rise of fascism, it's not a helpful system for trying to, put things back as they were.
No, I mean, we're definitely up against it here. This has been a decades-long plan from the Republicans. The Federalist Society has been grooming lawyers to basically have a un-American judicial philosophy, and creating a permission structure for them to rule in ways that would make the founding fathers vomit. And it's a problem. Like, so whatever, where's it going to be where's the case going to be heard? Is it going to be in Texas? Is it going to be in the DC Circuit Court? That matters tremendously for what the outcome is, what arguments are made, and then ultimately, if it's appealed, how the Supreme Court, which is obviously extremely weighted toward toward the sort of MAGA brand, how they hear that case. So it's
because Trump hopes that it goes to the Supreme Court, doesn't he? Invariably, and you mentioned the Federalist Society. I mean, Leonard Leo and that whole movement. I mean, they installed half the judges anyway. So in the High Court. So this is it's not checkmate, but it seems to me that the only solution is people power, which is where you come in.
Absolutely, and Senator Booker, who very effectively held the floor in Congress in the Senate last week for 25 plus hours. That's what he said. He said, this is about people, new leaders rising up, and I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, I'm not talking about senators, I'm talking about citizens. And that is 100% where, if America's going to get saved, it's going to get saved by the people.
Yep. Let's just talk about the protests that have been kind of going on around the country. This was, there's been several groups organizing, these protests across 50 states, with demonstrations organized under the banner of Hands Off, targeting perceived threats to democracy, bodily autonomy, climate justice also. And these protests are a direct response to not just Donald Trump, but Elon Musk, of course, as a tech billionaire, and accusing these people of undermining the key democratic principles and freedoms. And so yesterday's protests, led by various advocacy groups, including the Third Act and Reproductive Freedom for All, drew thousands of support. And as you said earlier, it's likely that this support is not just coming from Democrats. And we really are seeing the public, if not the leadership, but the public crossing the aisle in their own communities to stand shoulder to shoulder with people. Do you think we're breaking down that left-right barrier and maybe starting to realize that it's the goodies versus the baddies?
Yes, I think we're starting to.
Early days.
Early days. I think it's the goodies versus the baddies, but I also think that very, very importantly and truthfully, it's the 1% versus the rest of us.
Right.
I think Trump's everything that he's doing is about installing a sort of authoritarian oligarchy type state, and the fact that he tapped the richest man on the planet to destroy the federal government is not a coincidence.
Right.
So I really think a realignment of alliances, like dropping the red and the blue and getting back to democracy versus not, and general welfare versus welfare of the infinitesimally small number of billionaires and ultramillionaires that there are in this country, is that sort of meeting is where the ultimate salvation of American democracy will come from.
Let's talk about leadership for a second. You mentioned Cory Booker doing his 25-hour marathon on the Senate floor, which was beautiful not just because he was filibustering, but it was beautiful because of what he actually said and his ability to bring these stories from his constituents and his own story, life story, and his family's story of race and culture and America, and weaved all that beautifully together. It was quite a feat. I certainly couldn't even attempt to do something like that. And I think that certainly raised him above the parapet in terms of Democrats looking for leadership, which has been the one thing that kind of has been missing in the last 3 or 4 months. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been a lot of people or chickens running around with their heads cut off has been effectively what the response has been. Understandably. I mean, that's how I felt, that's how our volunteers at DemCast felt. So, and it's obviously like a shock to the system, and it makes sense that it was going to take a little bit for the party in general and for progressives and just pro-democracy people across the country to sort of find their footing. But yes, Booker getting up there and setting that example, as I think also AOC and Bernie Sanders have done, is really important. And he was extremely effective. It was very moving. I thought his, the when he was talking about being the longest filibuster in history and defeating Strom Thurmond, who's a devout racist and segregationist. He said, Cory Booker said, in effect, I'm not doing this because of him. Like I'm not trying to beat him. I'm doing this despite him.
Yeah.
I'm standing up here because the people, overcame that, that obstacle to a multicultural, multiracial democracy. And that was just a really powerful moment. And we just need a lot more of that.
Well, considering that is actually the threat, and maybe, that would have been in hindsight a good thing for the Democrats to have spoken about is the Nazism, as I see it. This desire to remove any shred of multiculturalism from the US. And I think, as I describe it, I see these these racist MAGA Republicans, not all of them, of course, I'm talking about the leadership.
Sure. They
look at the demographic change. They see the latest census. They see that the US percentage-wise is, around, I think it's around 60% white. So they see this kind of the people of color rising in numbers, and it makes them very nervous. And we know that Trump is obsessed with genes and eugenics, and so is Elon Musk. And when you kind of dig down into all of these people, including J.D. Vance, and I mean, a lot of them, they all have very weird, far-right, racist views about humanity. This is the right, look, Elon Musk tried to get the AfD elected in Germany. In Germany.
Right.
I mean, this is something that we have to take very seriously. And for me, that was why Cory Booker's speech meant so much, because it genuinely was pushback against the Nazification of America.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't have said that better. There's a lot of facets to what they're doing. There's sort of a billionaire, oligarchic ideology at play.
Yeah.
There's a obviously an extremely racist piece at play. There's a extremely misogynistic.
Yeah. All the big hitters.
It's all of it. But ultimately, like, I think it was the LBJ signing the Civil Rights Act, that led the Republican Party to devolve into the plan that they've been executing since Reagan got elected in 1980. And so, like, racism is definitely at the core of all of their plans and what they're trying to do in terms of eliminating public services, or messing up the government enough, making the government dysfunctional enough that public services don't really function very well for the people who really need them, which is disproportionately, people of color and low income Americans. So, and women.
And women, because of course, raising women from Now the military, we're hearing from Pete Hegseth, of course, doesn't believe that women should fight in a combat role, but also the diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility thing that has really been at the core of their changes, even using algorithms to pull anything, any reference to these types of things out of government websites and the like.
Yeah.
Is it's abhorrent, and yet they think that they've kind of worked out the solution, the final solution, maybe.
Yeah. Well, that's what they want. I think you can erase words from websites, but you can't erase a moral imperative from the public. Yeah. And so I think in the short term they might be right, but in the long term, I do have some faith that the broad swath of the American people are not on board with their agenda.
Yes. Well, it's the women that are going to be the ones to bring about the change. That's what I'm feeling anyway.
Yeah.
Listen, we have to take a quick break, but I want to come back and talk about future leadership. You mentioned AOC and Bernie Sanders. We'll talk about them and how people can rise up in this moment in history. We'll do that next here on The Weekend Show. So it's a new year, 2025, and you're thinking, how am I going to make this year different? Am I going to build something for myself? I'm dying to be my own boss, or see if I can turn this business idea I've been kicking around into a reality. But I just don't know how to make it happen. Shopify is how you're going to make it happen, and let me tell you how. The best time to start your new business is right now, and Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates, no coding or design skills required. All you need to do is drag and drop. Their powerful social media tools let you connect all of your channels and create shoppable posts to help you sell everywhere that people scroll. Shopify makes it easy to manage your growing business. They help with the details like shipping, taxes, and payments from one single dashboard, allowing you to focus on the important stuff like growing your business. With Shopify, your first sale is closer than you think. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/weekend, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/weekend to start selling with Shopify today. That's shopify.com/weekend. We're back on The Weekend Show with Nick Knudsen from DemCast USA. Nick, the shift that we are seeing from people is that they, I think, maybe are starting to feel like there is something they can do. You know, a few weeks ago, it felt like all was lost as Trump was signing executive orders, dozens of them every single day, many of them illegal, but that didn't seem to stop him. And one of them, for me anyway, the most essential one of those was this. It was like a version of the SAVE Act, which they've been trying to get through Congress. And this is a policy to basically suppress the vote, to bring about voter ID, to reduce the number of drop boxes or polling places, to reduce the time that you have to vote, to bring in additional rules like not giving people water in line and all sorts of crazy stuff. Anything to reduce the number of people voting in the USA, which in their mind guarantees that Republicans can stay in office forever. What are your thoughts on this? Because it was both an executive order, which is being challenged in court, but it's also the SAVE Act in Congress. So there is a double-pronged approach at trying to get this thing passed, because clearly it means so much to the Republicans, because arguably it's how Trump got elected in November in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think that the executive order and the sort of pro-democracy organizations broadly don't think that the executive order is going to hold up. The SAVE Act is scary, and it's only going to take a few Democrats in the Senate to have a Susan Collins moment to get that thing passed. And it's so for folks who don't know what's in that, basically it increases the requirements for voter registration tremendously. You have to either show a passport or a birth certificate to register to vote or to change your voter registration. And you have to do it in person. You can't do it via online voter registration, which has become incredibly popular and convenient for Americans. And ultimately, as we were kind of talking about before, in terms of misogyny and women,
it's the women that are going to be mostly affected because of name changes after marriage.
Name changes after marriage, yeah, it's a huge deal. It's millions and millions of people who don't have ready access to that documentation, and then also in rural areas, the Center for American Progress did a study on what the impact would be for people in 30 Western counties that are sort of massive counties where there's like one election office and you have to go and during business hours and show your documentation to somebody in person and what the drive time would be. And it's like 4.5 hours for somebody.
Plus the cost as well. Getting passports is expensive. A family of 4, you're into hundreds of dollars just to do that, let alone paying to have a photograph taken. I mean, even that, right. I was surprised recently. I'm like, really? What, for 2 little pictures? It's that much money?
Right.
These might not seem like barriers to people of means, but for people who live hand to mouth and paycheck to paycheck, as so many people do, these are additional costs that they simply can't afford. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the whole idea is, let's reduce the number of people who are voting. Yeah. And especially women. I mean, all you have to do is look at the election results from 2024 to see why they would want to do that.
Yes.
It was overwhelmingly men who voted for Trump and women who voted for Kamala Harris. And that's been the pattern for a long time, especially in the Trump era. So it's absolutely abhorrent. It's also a solution in search of a problem. Like, the whole premise of this is like, oh, we have to keep our elections safe. We have to make sure that only citizens vote, as though there is a problem with non-citizens voting, which is completely not a problem.
It's not
at all. Yeah, it's not a thing. Like maybe there's like a handful of cases across the country. Yeah. In any given year. So. We folks out there, call in particular your senators and let them know how you feel about the SAVE Act. Make sure, just especially if they're Democrats in purple states, just double check. Just make sure that they know how you feel about that. Just give them the courage to make sure that this legislation doesn't pass, because it would be an absolute electoral disaster moving forward.
And when I said that it helped Trump get elected, the research that I did about voter suppression, interestingly and quite cleverly, was not in the weeks preceding the election, but it's actually been done over the last 4 or 5 years. Since losing in 2020, I think that the Republicans realized that they needed to ramp up the voter suppression laws in state by state. Mm-hmm. And so every state is different. The rules are completely different. And in places like Georgia, it is almost impossible to vote due to the 50 or 60 bills that have been brought about by the governor there. I mean, this is intentional voter suppression designed, as you say, to not just prevent women from voting, but people of color and anybody that doesn't, again, fit their description who is most likely to vote Republican.
Yep. That's this is this has been their plan. Brian Kemp down in Georgia has been pushing this for years.
He's all over this, isn't he?
He's all over this. He has been for a long time, and sort of setting the blueprint for what states can do to limit, purge the voter rolls unnecessarily, so that you're kicking off people who haven't moved and are perfectly, that they vote, they're citizens, but just like erasing their voter registration so that they have to go in and re-register, and maybe they don't realize that they need to go and do that, and so they can't cast a ballot. I mean, it's completely, terrible and anti-democratic, small d democratic, anti-American. Preventing people from voting is like pretty much the most anti-American thing that you can do in my book. And the Republicans are all over it.
I mean, it says a lot about what they want for this country. We often are pushing this fight for democracy. And I don't believe that you can really define democracy. I mean, it's one of those words a little bit like fascism or communism or socialism that is actually quite hard to define. It can mean different things to different people. You can take communist and put it next to Chinese and suddenly it means something completely different. And that is problematic for people that are not engaged with politics or history. And so with Trump, calling Democrats all the names under the sun, communists and socialists and everything.
Socialists,
I mean, AOC took this recently, didn't she, with a mail shot, and she kind of referred to, what was it, the communists fight back or something. I mean, there's some genius in that. Do you think that might be a solution in this moment? I mean, would it be pertinent for Democrats to set up a program to help everyone get a passport or to help them access their birth certificate and actually play Republicans at their own game?
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, and we're going to have to, if these sort of anti-voter bills are passing, whether the one at the federal level passes, as you said, they're bills like this are passing at state level. So we're going to have to get creative. And I do think that, this idea of embracing, like pushing back and being like, no, look, yeah, fine, communist, socialist, whatever, label it what you want. We think that it's good to help your neighbor. We think that it's good to make sure that, Janice down the street can cast her ballot, because why shouldn't she?
Yes.
And just calling them on the bullshit, as sort of matter of factly as possible, and really trying to reinvigorate America with a sense of, we're all in this together, which is I think what the sort of Reagan to Trump era has really sort of not erased, but had a really big impact on over time, is this like rugged individualism. It's meritocracy. It's my rights. I want my rights. And we've gotten away from sort of the FDR, LBJ. Like, no, we're society.
Yeah. It's become no rights, hasn't it? I mean, that's the problem, isn't it? You've got to have some rights.
Got to have some rights,
and so many of them are being stripped by the Trump regime. Let's talk about leadership and Bernie Sanders. I like the slogan of Bernie was right, because so much of what we talk about now goes back to Bernie Sanders' messaging for the last 20 or 30 years. I mean, this guy has not swayed from his thinking, and yet everything that he has said has either, happened, and we're dealing with it now, and yet he was kind of cast out by the Democrats. He is an independent, became an independent because he was considered too far to the left. I mean, can you make any sense of that now in hindsight?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that happened. The Reagan and Bush era pushed America really far to the right, and in terms of just political philosophy. Clinton was extremely centrist. So there was a very long era where Democrats kind of got away from economic populist philosophy, and so it's not surprising that when it, especially in 2015, 2016, when the sort of Bernie and Hillary primaries were going on, that the party, but the voters, pushed him to the side and sort of like for a variety of reasons.
Well, he was a relatively old guy then, wasn't he? I mean, he was
already pretty old. Yeah,
and he's still going though. And I mean, he admitted the other day that he's tired, and I was like, no, don't be tired, Bernie. We need you. But he's currently touring the country with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. talking to tens of thousands of people at a time. This, I personally don't believe there is such a thing as the far left. I don't really know what that is when people talk to me about it, because I come from a social democracy where unions and we don't even call it socialism or socialized medicine. It's just normal. It's how normal.
Right.
But I don't really understand what the far left is when you consider that almost everything else is on the far right as the opposition in this country. So what is it, do you think, that Bernie and AOC are saying that people are responding to now?
I think it's the uniting message of anti-oligarchy. That's really what the tour is about, and that's really what's happening right now. And so it's hitting people like, I during the 2024 election cycle when Joe Biden was running, and then Kamala Harris too, there was kind of from the campaign, there was a force feeding of messaging around the economy's great, and I was concerned about that at the time because I'm an American, I do okay, but I've got 2 kids, they have 2 households, we have, the bills are piling up, the college seems completely unaffordable. This is not kind of how I envisioned adulthood.
But it is it is normal. What you're describing is normal.
It's totally normal, and it's what all Americans, really feel who aren't in that sort of upper echelon of wealth. And so I think what AOC and Bernie are tapping into is that it's it's sort of more the all the social stuff, all the culture stuff, whatever. Yeah, we're getting screwed. We are getting screwed, people, and these rich billionaires are coming in to dismantle our government and take all of our tax money and pocket it, and we're going to be left with crumbs at best. And I think that that's a really important message for this moment in history.
And what's different this time, I guess, is that maybe before, when Bernie talked about the oligarchs, we didn't really know how to visualize them.
Yeah.
But now they're standing in the Oval Office wearing a black overcoat and a dark Gothic MAGA hat with a child on their shoulders as a human shield, directing the focus away from the president. I mean, it is so, it's such a reality now, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. And in retrospect, after we fight back and win back our democracy, perhaps Trump's choice, which I'm sure he laughed about on his golden toilet, of naming Elon Musk as the leader of the movement to dismantle the federal government, maybe that was a fatal mistake in their efforts, because the optics of it are galling.
Did you see that clip of Elon where he's sitting there almost crying, saying, "I don't understand why they're being like this about me, and why they're vandalizing Tesla dealerships, and I've only ever done good." I mean, they're both so compromised mentally, as we know.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's almost like they make each other worse. They're in a toxic relationship with each other.
I hope so, and I hope that, that's what it seems like. And I hope that continues, because it's not great. No. It's pissing people off, and it's pissing, as we've been saying, it's not just Democrats. This is hitting everybody.
Well, turning the forecourt of the White House into a Tesla dealership probably didn't help either. I mean, such a naive move, really, so completely lacking in self-awareness to park a bunch of cars out front and do an infomercial.
Right.
And get in the car and hear Trump say, "Oh, it's all computer." Just showed how far removed he is from our shared reality.
Yeah. No, we can sit around and try and figure out what a malignant narcissist is thinking all day long, but we're probably not going to be able to understand it. Yeah. Two of them. Yeah.
It's so interesting. And so Bernie and AOC, as they have presented themselves, are really the antidote to that. There is so much, they are so mentally healthy. And I think that is something that people are starting to realize. Maybe it's, as you say, not the goodies and baddies, but, who is healthy and who is unhealthy, and what is unhealthy for America. And, bringing RFK Jr. and having him effectively shut down vaccination programs and allow measles to rise to unprecedented levels and claim that vitamin A is going to save us. I mean, this stuff is going to reverberate with all voters, not just Democrats.
Yes. Yeah. It's over time. Absolutely. I think it will, because the truth is just hitting us in the face. And I think obviously I'm extremely concerned about the rise of authoritarianism and potential dictatorship. That's all on the table right now. But the thing that, the sort of Hitler era authoritarians didn't have was the internet.
Yes.
And like that, it's got its downsides for sure. And the jerks who were standing behind Trump at his inauguration control the algorithms. So it's an uphill battle. But what Bernie and AOC in particular, do extremely well is leverage social media reach to get truth in front of people in the place where they see the news and sort of process world events, which is, as they're scrolling on, Instagram Reels and TikTok and all the other platforms. So, there's some, while there's a lot of concern about social media and what authoritarians putting their thumb on the algorithm could do over time, there is some hope in that we are able to reach people with truth and with and get arguments in front of them and help shed a light on. And it's not just AOC; it's Trevor from Ohio who got laid off from his
That's
auto
right. People
plant.
are talking to their phones and giving people they're generating content that is actually for the first time maybe on Instagram and TikTok really matters.
Yeah.
Ironically, as opposed to just filming themselves putting their makeup on. These messages are essential. And we do have some leaders within the Democratic Party. Jasmine Crockett is my favorite for her.
Oh, she's great.
For her energy, her use of language, and just the way she cuts the Republicans down to size. Yes. It's beautiful. Do you think that the gloves need to come off a little more? Because this is the criticism of Chuck Schumer and these "we will win" type of things. It's like, it's not enough. You literally have to take the gloves off and you need to fight in a way that is matching the opposition.
Yeah. So you're saying press releases aren't going to do the job anymore?
Well, leaflet drops is how the Nazis did it. I mean, it's going to take a whole lot more than that, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. No, gloves off. I mean, Trump has done a lot of things to American politics. One of the things that he has done is, demolished norms. And, it used to be the politicians had to be all buttoned up and had to worry about what their super rich donor friends were thinking about the things that they were saying on the stump or whatever. Those days are gone.
Yeah. All the protocols have been broken.
Yep. And so it's what people want to consume, particularly online, is just authenticity. It's, and that's why, these sort of vertical videos of just regular people talking about, the impacts of the Trump administration on their lives are going to be so important, over the coming years. And if you're a politician who isn't comfortable or isn't, good on social media in the 2020s, then you probably shouldn't be a politician anymore. Yeah. I mean, so we need the Jasmine Crockett's, we need the AOC's. James Tallarico is one of my favorites. Wonderful. He's a legislator down in Texas. Mm-hmm. Just eloquent, smart, not afraid of the camera.
Yeah, he's been on the show a couple of times, and I'm always completely bowled over at his ability to connect. Despite being a devout Christian and driving a message of Christianity, he manages to cross cross the kind of the Rubicon. It's quite incredible that is possible, despite what we are told that everything has to be compartmentalized, and it's simply not true. Some senators and Congress people have set up little studios in their offices, I'm pleased to say. I mean, I watch Adam Schiff, and he's got a fantastic little studio in his office, and he started using the F word recently, employing that quite a lot. And I'm like, yeah, do it, and Jasmine on the steps of the Capitol swearing as well. I'm all for that stuff. I really do feel that it's there's no time like the present. And yet there are other Congress people that I've interviewed, certainly, who, they cannot get their shit together. And they've got no setup. They've got no environment. Where can I? And they end up balancing their phone on books to do the interview. And I'm like, this is not going to win elections. You need to embrace the medium.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we need leaders who can communicate in the ways that that people consume media now, and and that's always been the case, right? I mean, Lincoln leveraged railroads, JFK leveraged the television. Politicians throughout time have successful politicians throughout time have figured out ways to leverage whatever the technology of the day
Obama was the one really for social media, wasn't he? And that was a campaign built on social media that had never been done before, and people thought he was crazy for insisting upon it. And that was back when Twitter was in the hands of decent people.
Yeah. Back in the day.
Yeah. We have to talk about the tariffs just for a moment, because obviously it's the biggest story of the week, not just in the US, but right around the world. A trip to the grocery store is about to become even more expensive. And this isn't me saying this. This is the economists looking at what Trump has done following this latest round of import tariffs that Trump announced in the Rose Garden on Wednesday, like a game show host. I mean, he's like desperate to do a show. I'm sure I've heard him say it a few times in interviews, but I remember him talking about rallies, and he said, yeah, we did a show down there, and we did a show down. And I was like, whoa, this guy literally thinks these are performances. So these tariffs paid for by businesses on goods from abroad, they come on the heels of the previous round that was aimed at Canada and Mexico and China. He's just put 10% on everything, effectively, and then for countries that he thinks are the worst offenders, as he called them, he's then put tariffs as high as 50% on top of the previous 20% or 10%. So it's taken the economists a few days to work out the formula. But it turns out it's to divide the US trade deficit with each country by that country's exports to the US. And the final reciprocal tariff was then divided by 2 with a minimum of 10%. So China gets 34%. I mean, this is going to totally upend shopping, retail, imports for every country of the world, practically.
Yeah. I mean, it's a wrecking ball.
It's a wrecking ball. Yeah.
I mean, he is, it's like, did he come up with this policy or did Putin? Because you couldn't come up with a more sort of, impactful economic realignment, policy than what he's doing. So, and a lot of Americans still, I think, they're starting to get it. It's certainly like watching the stock market. People are like, but you'll feel it in the supermarket, and the reason that you'll feel it is that we talk about having a tariff on China, and that sounds like, oh, okay, well, when China sends us something, they're going to have to pay more money. That's not how a tariff works. A tariff means when a U.S. company imports a product from another country, when that product gets to our port, there is a tax that's applied to the U.S. company, and then what is the U.S. company going to do with that increased costs? Well, just what they did during COVID, they're going to pass that cost along to the consumer. So it's it's a wrecking ball. It's terrible policy, and just the signs of somebody who wants to destabilize the world.
And deconstruct it, which is what he's done with the federal government. And this goes beyond that. But again, all of this was in Project 2025. Again, the news media, the mainstream corporate news media that are like treating it like it's a surprise. It's so frustrating. I've been reading that Project 2025 document since late 2022 and talking about it. And yet this kind of shock that goes with it, I suppose maybe people are starting to join the dots with the oligarchs, aren't they? And seeing that, as you say, that Russia will benefit from this. Notice there was no need for any tariff on Russia because of the sanctions. And so what this is going to do effectively is realign the rest of the world with Russia's disastrous economy. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. I mean, Nintendo have pulled the Switch 2 pre-orders in the US because of the tariffs. There's going to be a lot of kids pretty upset about that. Yeah.
No, it's going to hit. It's going to hit absolutely everything.
Yeah.
A lot of US companies, knowing that, anticipating, sort of a trade war specifically with China, reposition their offshore manufacturing in other countries, like a Vietnam or something like that. And here we go. Like, too bad, guys, because these tariffs are going to hit everywhere. So
it's another Vietnam War. It's a trade war. This is not just tariffs. The word war is completely applicable in this case because of now of these other countries now are going to reciprocate, and so everything is just going to ramp up. I guess we can't really say much more about it at the moment because it hasn't really taken effect. But we need to talk again in 6 months' time, and the effect of that will kind of be absolutely clear. Finally, let's just talk about just from our protest conversation and empowering people, and I just want to kind of dig into your expertise with the work that you do. What advice would you have for people who are starting to feel like engagement is essential and that activism, it might not be something that they have really done before, felt the need to, or even needed to, but now they can clearly see that something needs to be done and we all need to band together?
Yeah. I guess I'd just say to those people, welcome. The good news is that there is muscle memory here, in terms of, there was a period of the 60s and sort of the Vietnam era protests and that kind of stuff where America really flexed its muscles, and obviously civil rights, nonviolent protesting, that kind of thing. And then there was a little bit of a dormant phase, and then really after the first Trump election, a whole infrastructure for activism was propped up, like Women's dozens and dozens of organizations,
BLM
and efforts. Black Lives Matter, Black Voters Matter, like the organizations that rose up, Indivisible, Swing Left, DemCast. So the good news is, everybody, that there is muscle memory, there is infrastructure, and civil society has while it's going to be tested, has a lot of strength. There's long-standing, amazing organizations and activists like folks over at the ACLU and Public Citizen, and pro-democracy organizations that are going to be that are going to have the backs of everyday Americans. So that's number one. And number two, the good news is that you can find a home in one or more of those organizations. There's groups like Indivisible and Swing Left and DemCast are volunteer organizations where you can join. You can find people at the local level to have local actions, and that's, I think, sort of primary advice that I would offer up to people is, getting loud locally is just really important. Like standing out on this, like it's uncomfortable, and especially as authoritarianism sort of takes hold, there are going to be concerns about exercising your right to free speech, and those aren't unwarranted concerns. But these are the times that we're living in, and we're going to need to band together, have each other's backs, and be brave, and go out there and stand on that street corner with that sign, so that other people who are driving past who feel the same way can feel equally as emboldened and maybe come out and join, the next time that you're out there. So, it's the little things. It's calling your representatives on a regular basis, both at the state level and at the federal level, letting them know how you feel, paying attention. Don't put your head in the sand, and just encourage the people in your life, to understand what's actually going on. Don't be afraid to tell them about what tariffs are doing, about what the dismantling of the Department of Education is going to mean for local school districts. All of these things. People are busy. People have very full lives. They're working multiple jobs. They're raising kids, and so a lot of people are just. They may feel the effects of this at the grocery store or something like that, but they don't have time to figure out why it's happening. And so, just being a squeaky wheel in your local community and letting and in your networks and letting people know what's happening is going to be essential.
Never was there a time to test the First Amendment than now, really. That's how I feel.
Absolutely.
I'm grateful to you for your advice and your expertise and for the work that you do. For now, Nick Knudsen, thank you for joining the Weekend Show.
Thanks so much.
I'm Anthony Davis. Don't forget to support me and independent journalism at patreon.com/5 Minute News or by joining the 5 Minute News YouTube channel. Next week, I'll come back with a brand new special guest and more factual news to discuss on the 5 Minute News Weekend Show with Midas Touch.